In this heartwarming footage, 2-year-old Caylee Anthony is seen laughing and playing with her mother, Casey Anthony. But behind this innocent moment lies a chilling truth. Caylee is about to vanish without a trace.
It's an instinct you're supposed to have as a parent to know something is wrong with your child. I should have known.
Right there, right there, right there.
Caylee would have said goodbye to every one of those planes.
Bye, Daddy!
And her blowing a kiss. Bye, people. Have a good trip.
Bye!
On July 15, 2008, a series of 3 911 calls were made by Cindy Anthony, Caylee's grandmother.
911. Hi, I need to bring someone into the police department. Can you tell me where the closest one I can come into?
What are you trying to accomplish by bringing them to the station?
I have a 22-year-old person that has grand theft sitting in my auto with me.
So the 22-year-old person stole something?
Yes.
Is this a relative?
Yes.
Okay, is this your son?
Daughter. My car was stolen. We've retrieved it today. We found out where it was at, and I've got affidavit to my banking account. I want to bring her in. I want to press charges.
Where did all of this happen?
Hope Spring Drive.
That's actually going to be in the jurisdiction of the sheriff's office. Let me transfer you.
Okay. Because my next thing will be down the trial thing, and we'll have a court order to get her. If that's what you want to say, we'll do it. And you'll never. Well, then you have. No, I'm not giving you another day. I've given you a month.
At that moment, Cindy didn't know about her missing granddaughter. Her only focus was on the missing car. The sheriff told Cindy to go home and call 911. Half an hour later, Cindy called from the house number.
911. I have someone here that I need to be arrested in my home.
They're there right now?
I have a possible missing child. I have a 3-year-old that's been missing for a month.
A 3-year-old?
Yes.
Have you reported that?
I'm trying to do that now, ma'am. I'd like to speak to an officer. Can you have someone come out to my house?
Okay, I gotta ask you these questions so I can put them in the call, okay?
Okay,
what's your name?
Casey Anthony.
Casey's there right now?
Yes, I got her. I finally found her after a month. She's been missing for a month. I found her, but we can't find my granddaughter.
Is Casey not telling you where her daughter is?
Correct.
Okay, we'll have a deputy out to you as soon as one's available, okay?
Thank you.
Thank you.
After an hour, Cindy made the third call.
911, what's your emergency? I called a little bit ago, the deputy sheriff. I found out my granddaughter has been taken. She has been missing for a month. We're talking about a 3-year-old little girl. My daughter finally admitted that the baby's in the store. There's something wrong. I found my daughter's car today, and it smells like there's been a dead body in the damn car.
Okay, what is the 3-year-old's name?
Caylee.
Cindy's voice trembled with panic and emotion as she made those calls, desperate and frantic. But what was perhaps more unsettling was Casey Anthony's response, calm, almost unnervingly so, as the storm of confusion and fear began to swirl around her.
Is your daughter there?
Yes.
Can I speak with her?
Hey, sheriff's department. They want to talk to you. Answer the questions. Hello?
Hello?
Yes.
Can you tell me what's going on a little bit?
I'm sorry?
Can you tell me a little bit what's going on?
My daughter's been missing for the last 31 days.
And you know who has her?
I know who has her. I've tried to contact her. I actually received a phone call today, now from a number that is no longer in service. I did get to speak to my daughter for about a minute.
What we believe we have at this point is a 3-year-old that's been missing for a month. Didn't make sense. I mean, usually when a child goes missing, parents report it right away.
I'm trying to console Cindy. Cindy's falling into my arms. I mean, she's very weak and thinking, what the heck's going on?
It didn't take long for authorities to realize that something far more disturbing was unfolding within the Anthony home. As suspicions deepened, Casey Anthony was brought in for questioning.
You took Caylee to babysitter's house?
Yes.
And walk me through, you dropped her off to go to work?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, get off of work.
I got off of work and I show up to the apartment, knock on the door. nobody answers. I call Zenaida's cell phone and it's out of service.
In her interrogation, Casey told detectives that she worked at Universal Studios, but as investigators dug deeper, they found that her story was falling apart. Casey didn't work at Universal Studios. It was a lie. Her claim about leaving Caylee with a nanny named Zenaida Fernandez Gonzalez also turned out to be false. With each lie uncovered, the mystery of Caylee's disappearance grew even darker.
It was certainly confusing. I mean, we have a child who's been missing for a month, but then we have a mother that essentially everything she's told us at this point has been a lie. Why will she not tell us the truth? What's taken place here? Where's the child?
On July 16, 2008, Casey was arrested for lying to detectives during the investigation.
Casey Anthony held her head high after being arrested yesterday, charged with child neglect and lying to the authorities. So far, investigators had no luck locating that friend who was supposedly caring for the young girl. It is just one more element in a strange story that has even the woman's own mother concerned.
They took her. I was heartbroken and scared to death. But you think you can get more answers out of her there, then do it.
After her arrest, Casey made her first call to her family from jail. Even then, Casey stayed calm and showed no real concern about finding her missing daughter.
Casey?
Mom.
Hey, sweetie.
Well, I just saw your nice little cameo on TV. You don't know what my involvement is and stuff?
I don't know what your involvement is, sweetheart. You're not telling me where she's at.
Because I don't fucking know where she's at. Are you kidding me?
How come everybody's saying that you're not upset, that you're not crying, that you show no caring of where Caylee is at all?
I'm not sitting here fucking crying every 2 seconds because I have to stay composed to talk to detectives, to make other phone calls, to do other things. I can't sit here and be crying every 2 seconds like I want to. I can't.
I talked to her for the first time after she was arrested. I didn't have the energy to be upset with her. And I'm thinking, if you're not telling them everything to help them, I can't understand.
When I listen to that first jail call, there's some big red flags that jump out at you. This girl just doesn't seem to be genuinely interested in the fact that her daughter is missing.
With Casey now in custody, arrested for obstructing the investigation, lying to police, and child neglect, investigators turned their attention to finding Caylee. They began piecing together the timeline leading up to her disappearance. According to the Orange County Sheriff's report, they were able to trace Caylee's most recent movements. On June 15, 2008, Caylee and Casey visited the Anthony family home. June 16th would be the last day anyone saw Caylee alive.
Casey and I tucked her in that night, and I knew they were in bed sleeping, and I know George fed her breakfast and saw them leave together Monday. That was one day that I didn't go in there and say goodbye to them. I was going to work early. I had an early meeting, and I just didn't want to wake them up. And if looking back now, I certainly would have said goodbye.
Papa, was tired, Papa? You tired, Papa?
Well, I missed life at the party. It's your party. You can do what you want to.
On June 20th, just 5 days after Caylee was last seen, Casey was spotted partying at Fusion nightclub. Over the next month, security cameras captured her shopping at malls without Caylee. She even got a new tattoo that read Bella Vita, meaning beautiful life in Italian. During this time, Casey had been using her parents' car, but on June 27th, 12 days after Caylee was last seen, she abandoned the car. On June 30th, the car was impounded, and a letter was sent to her parents. On July 15th, 31 days after Caylee's last sighting, George and Cindy retrieved the car and noticed a terrible odor coming from the trunk.
When I opened up that garage door, when I pulled the car in the garage, that smell encompassed my whole house. When you talk about death, a smell, it was in my house.
Cindy then tracked Casey down at her boyfriend Tony Lazaro's apartment, brought her home, and called the police.
This something wrong. I found my daughter's car today, and it smells like there's been a dead body in the damn car.
When investigators arrived, they immediately began searching the car.
When we walked into the forensics bay, it was clear to all of us, if you've smelled that odor before, it's pretty unmistakable. We brought cadaver dogs in. The dog will indicate to the handler in some way that maybe a dead body's been there. This pointed us in the direction that this child is dead. Not only was she dead, she had been in the trunk of Casey's car. And so, and obviously we couldn't say that for sure, but it seemed pretty likely. At this point, Casey was in jail, and we all believed that we arrested the right person.
In the trunk, they also found dead hair and traces of chloroform. Despite these worrying clues, Casey wasn't officially named the main suspect yet, but people were starting to wonder about her role in Caylee's disappearance. On August 21st, 2008, something surprising happened. Casey walked out of the Florida jail. She had posted a $500,000 bond.
Hey, I thought you guys, I don't know. What can you tell us, Casey? We live here.
Tonight, the search for Caylee reaches a boiling point, as you can see and hear neighbors fighting back protesters demanding Casey Anthony's return to jail. Protesters feel Casey is hiding a horrible truth.
She has completely removed herself from any normal emotion of a mother missing a child, and that is the most disturbing part for me.
I lost my entire life when I lost Caylee. She was the only thing that truly and honestly mattered to me. I let her dress herself how she wanted to dress. I let her eat what she wanted to eat within reason. She was thriving. I was always there. I was a part of that. I got to see how infectious she was in everyone's lives.
Even though Caylee hadn't been found, on October 14th, 2008, a grand jury indicted Casey on charges of first-degree murder, aggravated child abuse, aggravated manslaughter of a child, and 4 counts of giving false information to the police. Casey later pleaded not guilty to all charges. The case took an unexpected turn as investigators delved deeper into Casey's character. Friends and family painted a picture of a loving mother, someone who doted on Caylee and showed no signs of neglect or abuse. They insisted Casey was devoted to her daughter, recounting countless moments of affection and care.
Casey was a good mom. She took care of that child. She loved that baby. She was always focused on Caylee. You know, she was a part of her. She was everywhere that she was.
In the early beginnings of the relationship, Casey would bring Caylee over. I saw Casey doing flashcards with her, teaching her how to say words, and that just made me want to be that type of parent to my own child.
On the other hand, investigators were shocked to see that after Caylee went missing, Casey was frequently spotted dancing at nightclubs, shopping at malls, and living what looked like a carefree life.
At this point, I would definitely want to learn more about the car and what was in the trunk. The prosecution claiming that multiple people, right from the start, made a point of saying that this was a decomposing dead body. It was Cindy, who was a nurse, did make comment that it smelt like a decomposing body.
As the trial of Casey Anthony unfolded, investigators focused on the first major piece of evidence, the car. They had already sent the car to forensics, where important discoveries were made. Besides the terrible odor, they found a stained area in the trunk, about the size of a child's body.
I thought to myself, we may not be looking for a missing child. This child may be gone.
Then police called George and Cindy to question them about the car.
Did you guys discuss the smell of the car or anything?
See, the thing of it was, when George opened the trunk...
When he went in the garage?
Oh, yeah, you could tell. As soon as we got home, we aired it out. Pizza was in the bag, and there was maggot in that pizza in there, and it was bad. I mean, it was really bad.
During the interrogation, Cindy's statements didn't match what she had said in the 911 call.
There's something wrong. I found my daughter's car today, and it smells like there's been a dead body in the damn car.
This time she claimed they found a bag of garbage inside the car's trunk.
That had to have been closed up in that car for 19 days at least.
We're focusing on finding Caylee.
But are you looking for a live Caylee or dead Caylee?
We're looking for Caylee, Cindy, because we don't know where Caylee is.
Cindy Anthony later said she had made a rush to judgment, and the stench she inhaled was likely an old pizza in the trunk.
There was a bag of pizza for, 12 days in the back of the car full of maggots. It stunk so bad.
I smelled a foul smell, but I said whatever I could to get those police officers here because at that point, I knew that Caylee was missing.
Casey threw the garbage in the trunk of her car. And like many of us forget sandwiches and leftovers and doggy bags, she forgot to throw out the trash. That's where the smell comes from.
After further investigation by forensic experts, it was concluded that the evidence from the car trunk wasn't strong enough to build a case against Casey, as none of it was directly linked to her. Meanwhile, the search for Caylee reached a critical point. The EquiSearch organization, with hundreds of volunteers, began combing the area where Caylee was last seen.
2,500 volunteer searchers from 14 states are battling mosquitoes, high water, and sweltering heat to try and find Caylee Anthony.
We're not going to give up, folks.
The head of EquiSearch says standing water from Tropical Storm Faye is severely hampering their search.
My God, let's have this water dry up. Let's have it go away because it's impossible to complete these areas.
Where's Caylee? At least where's her remains? Cindy, you are a liar. George, you're a coward. Casey, you're a baby killer.
They're yelling and screaming profanities. To me, they were no better than my daughter lying to the police. It made no sense.
While the search for Caylee continued, Casey remained in custody for child neglect. Her parents were desperately trying to get the truth from her.
Hey, gorgeous, how you doing?
I look like hell.
Well, I want to be able to reach out and hug you and give you the big Papa Joe hug. I want to take your pain away from you. So, you can tell me anything.
I know that, Dad. I swear, we're not doing well, Case. Someone just said that Caylee was dead this morning. Surprise, surprise.
What mother says, surprise, surprise, about the disappearance of her own daughter? The reaction was so inappropriate that it just was chilling.
We need to have something to go on. Mom, I don't have anything. I'm sorry. I've been here a month today. Do you understand how I feel? I'm not in control over any of this. You don't understand. Everybody wants me to have answers. Come on.
Casey, hold on, sweetheart. Settle down, man.
Nobody's letting me speak. I don't know what's going on. My entire life has been taken from me. Everything has been taken from me. You don't understand.
I have a question for you.
Go ahead.
What's your gut telling you right now?
She's okay. She's not far.
And your gut tells you that she's close or something. She's.
I know in my heart she's not far. I can feel it.
Okay.
After this, investigators located Zenaida Fernandez Gonzalez, the woman Casey claimed was Caylee's nanny. When they interviewed her, Zenaida denied ever being a nanny and said she didn't know Caylee at all.
Zenaida was asked, "Do you know Casey Anthony?" "No, I do not." "You know Caylee Anthony?" "No, I do not." "Do you babysit for them?" "I don't babysit for them."
Investigators verified Zenaida's statements and determined she had nothing to do with Caylee's disappearance.
At that point, they truly began to suspect her of something more than just being a negligent mother. They think Casey Anthony killed her daughter.
As Casey faced more trouble, she hired a lawyer named Jose Baez, which meant investigators would lose direct access to her. While waiting for her lawyer, investigators arranged another interview with her.
I know in my gut, there's the feeling as a parent, you know certain things about your child, you can feel that connection. And I still have that feeling, that presence. I know that she's alive.
2 months later, on December 11th, 2008, the tragic discovery was made. Caylee Anthony's remains were found in a wooded area, just a quarter of a mile from the Anthony home on Suburban Drive.
911.
Yes, this is dispatch. We found a human skull.
Oh my gosh.
I know.
What's the location?
It's right off of Suburban and Chickasaw in the Caylee Anthony area, right by the...
Oh.
Police quickly arrived at the scene and found a plastic bag that contained a skull, visible through the bag, with duct tape wrapped around it.
I'm Detective Mellish with the Orange County Sheriff's Office. I'm present with Corporal Edwards of the Orange County Sheriff's Office, also present with Roy Marvin Cronk, KRNK. Yes, sir. You work for Orange County Utilities. Okay. We're here to ask you about questions about what you found in the woods today. I've read this route before, and I know this area over here in the woods is a safe place to urinate outside. So I parked my truck. I threw my yellow lights on to make it appear like I was actually doing something. I grabbed my meter stick out of the back of my truck. I went into the woods to urinate. When I was finished, I noticed a black plastic bag laying there, and I saw like a dome in it. And I took my stick and I hit it, and it thudded, and it sounded like either plastic or like, hollow bone or something. And so I took to my stick, which is curved for pulling meter boxes, and I grabbed the bottom of the bag and I pulled it, and then human skull dropped out with hair around it and duct tape across the mouth. And I went, oh God, and immediately came up, called my supervisor, and then called Orange County Utilities and notified them that I had found names and that I needed the police.
The remains of Caylee had been discovered earlier by a man named Roy Cronk 4 months prior. He informed the authorities, but they never conducted a search in that area.
3 times back in August, Roy Cronk called investigators to report a suspicious bag in the woods. The sheriff says an internal investigation is now underway to answer why detectives missed those critical clues.
On August 8, 2008, Roy Cronk made the first call to report what he had found.
I'm a meter reader with Orange County, and I had the route today that included the Anthony's home. Mm-hmm. Okay, and I stopped between the 2 swamp areas there. I don't know if you know what I'm talking about or not.
No, but go ahead.
But I noticed something that looked white, and there was a gray bag down in there. I don't know what it is. I'm not telling you it's Caylee or anything of that nature. And this could be nothing.
A deputy went out on August 11th and checked the grassy area, but he said he couldn't see anything and drove away. The next day, Roy Cronk called again.
Sheriff's Office? Yeah, hi. My name is Roy Cronk. I'm a meter reader with Orange County. I called this in yesterday. I don't know if it's what y'all looked at today or not, but behind one of the trees was a gray vinyl bag, like a pool cover or something like that. And it looked rather suspicious. I didn't touch anything.
The police responded again, but still couldn't locate Caylee's body. They called headquarters and were told that the area had already been searched. Frustrated, Roy Cronk went to meet the police and showed them where the body was.
Something that I called in a tip the other day, and they said they would dispatch an officer out to me when I got there. And I'm here.
All right. I'll have somebody out there as soon as I can.
All right, thank you.
When the police arrived, they met with Cronk. One deputy started to go down the hill, but slipped and fell. Frustrated, he told Cronk angrily that he was wasting their time.
Just did a cursory sort of looking around, didn't do much of anything.
Yes, ma'am.
And then proceeded to either argue with you or berate you about why you were wasting his time or the county's time.
Yes, he was berating me.
And because of how you were treated, you let the matter go.
Yes, ma'am.
On December 19th, 8 days after Caylee's body was found, Dr. Garavaglia held the press conference the world had been waiting for.
With regret, I'm here to inform you that the skeletal remains found on December 11th are those of the missing toddler, Caylee Anthony. The manner of death in this case is homicide.
I can tell you about what I remember from that morning. It's not much. It was horrible. I felt like someone had punched me in the gut and taken every breath out of my body. And my heart was just being ripped apart because all of our prayers and all of our hopes were gone as far as getting her back.
Since the body was completely decomposed, it was impossible to determine the exact cause of Caylee's death. Before her remains were found, the prosecution claimed Caylee was killed with chloroform, but after the discovery of duct tape on the skull, the state's theory changed. They now suggested that chloroform was used to sedate Caylee, and the duct tape was the murder weapon.
We can only hope that the chloroform was used before the tape was applied, so that Caylee went peacefully.
Though the prosecution's theory evolved, the defense argued differently. This gave Jose Baez another chance to challenge the state's narrative.
They're hoping they throw enough against the wall and see what sticks. Right down to their cause of death. 1 week it was chloroform. Today, it's duct tape. It makes no sense.
One day after Caylee's remains were discovered, authorities secured a search warrant for the Anthony home. What they found was stunning.
We found that Caylee's room was decorated in a Winnie the Pooh theme. So it appeared very clear that blanket from the crime scene didn't come from the house. The canvas bag turned out to be a laundry bag that was with the body. It was one that is sold in pairs by one of the local big chains. We found the mates to it at the Anthony house. If everything with the body came from the house, then this stranger abduction thing is basically getting blown out of the water. All the evidence we had pointed to the fact that Casey Anthony had killed Caylee. And she was charged with first-degree murder.
The pieces of evidence in this case, the duct tape, the laundry bag, the blanket. No one else lied to their friends, to their family, to investigators. And at the conclusion of all of the evidence and argument in this case, we will be asking you to return a verdict that reflects the truth. And that is that Casey Anthony is guilty of the crime of murder in the first degree.
However, the defense attorney introduced a new theory, claiming that Caylee had accidentally drowned in the family's swimming pool.
How in the world can a mother wait 30 days before ever reporting her child missing? It's insane. It's bizarre. Something's just not right about that. Well, the answer is actually relatively simple. She never was missing. Caylee Anthony died on June 16, 2008, when she drowned in her family's swimming pool. She's not guilty of murder. This is not a murder case. This is not a manslaughter case. This is a sad, tragic accident that snowballed out of control.
He says his client had nothing to do with the disposal of her body, that it was her father, George, bereft at fishing this child out of the swimming pool, who wrapped her in plastic and disposed of her body. And then the big shocker. He tells the jury that's exactly what George Anthony used to do to pets of theirs who died before he buried them in the backyard.
Many people wondered if Casey's parents were involved in covering up Caylee's death. Baez's statement completely changed the public's understanding of the case. If what he said was true, George and Cindy were involved in the crime and Casey helped them cover it up. Then, Jose Baez revealed another dark secret, telling the jury that Casey lied because her father told her to.
When Casey was 8 years old and her father came into her room and began to touch her inappropriately, she could be 13 years old, have her father's penis in her mouth, and then go to school and play with the other kids as if nothing ever happened.
It wouldn't take much for me to close my eyes and to hear the sound of my door opening in the middle of the night. And I'm just a kid laying in my bed, and it was a white day bed with white eyelet bedding. Everything was white. And I could smell my father's cologne before I even opened my eyes. That cologne, Halston Z14. And I could feel him as he kind of slid me over in my daybed and slid himself underneath the covers. And I'm still laying there acting like I'm asleep. And he starts to touch me. Slowly move my hair off of my neck. Run his hands down my back, underneath my shirt. I remember the first time he put his hands down my pants. Slid from the back first, and then went around the front. I was being told that I was safe, that I was okay. It's so hard when you're being told, you know, this is that special time, your daddy's special little girl.
The defense's strategy, introducing such an explosive claim, left many questioning its relevance and truth. George Anthony was then questioned about these accusations.
Have you ever sexually molested your daughter, Casey Anthony?
No, sir.
Were you present in your home when Caylee Anthony died?
No, and when I heard that today, it hurt really bad.
If Casey's claim about being abused by her father was true, many wondered about the phone calls they had while she was in jail. In those calls, Casey seemed to love her father, and he appeared to love her too.
Any stuff you want to talk to me about? Anything?
It's just nice hearing everything that's going on. I mean, I miss you guys. And I love you, and
I know you do. I love you too.
You've been a great dad, and you've been the best grandfather. Don't for a second think otherwise. I want to see all of you, but I wanted to see the one person that I've been so far disconnected from the longest, and that's been you.
This painted a very different picture of their relationship. George Anthony, a grandfather mourning the loss of his granddaughter, now found himself at the center of a maelstrom of accusations. The weight of these allegations, coupled with the grief of Caylee's disappearance, proved to be an almost unbearable burden. In a tragic turn of events, the pressure became too much for George to bear. In January 2009, as the case against his daughter Casey continued to unfold, George Anthony attempted to take his own life.
911, what is your emergency?
I'm George and Cindy Anthony's attorney. George Anthony has been gone since 8:30 this morning, and he has taken several bottles of medication from his house.
Because I was feeling so much sorrow for the loss of Caylee and not being able to find her, and thinking of my family dynamic, how it just changed so quickly, and I just wanted to just go to sleep.
It's another sad day for the Anthony family. George Anthony is being held for psychiatric evaluation this morning in a hospital in Daytona Beach.
George wrote a suicide letter to Cindy. While on suicide watch, police tracked George through his phone and took him to the hospital, where he survived the overdose.
I didn't know what anymore to do. Caylee Marie, I miss her. I miss her. I want my family back. I sit here falling apart because I should have done more. She was so close to home. Why is she gone? Why? I love you, Cynthia Marie. Caylee, here I come.
When questioned about his suicide attempt in court, George Anthony's composure crumbled. The weight of the tragedy, the accusations, and the public scrutiny overwhelmed him. His emotional breakdown on the stand revealed the deep, lasting trauma the case had inflicted on the Anthony family.
In late January of 2009, you attempted to commit suicide. Did you, sir?
Yes, sir, I did. I needed at that time to go and be with Caylee.
And you expressed that in the note.
Yes, I did. Because I believe I failed her. No, sir, I need to get through this. I need to have something inside of me get through this.
The case then moved into its final moments, with both the prosecution and defense presenting their different perspectives.
There's just no reason to put duct tape over the face of a child, and that, ladies and gentlemen, is proof beyond a reasonable doubt of how Caylee died.
And they couldn't find a single link from Casey to Caylee's death. To find her guilty of any single charge, you have to have an abiding conviction of guilt.
I did not believe it was rotting flesh.
And that's because you believed it to be garbage.
Yes.
There was a dead body in the back of Casey Anthony's car.
The car does not shed any light on how Caylee died. There's no way that this case was proven beyond a reasonable doubt.
Casey Anthony maintains her lies until they absolutely cannot be maintained anymore.
The way the state presented this case served only one purpose, and that was to paint Casey Anthony as a girl who lies and has absolutely nothing to do with how Caylee died. Casey was a good mother.
After the hearings, the jury took 10 hours to reach a verdict.
One of the indictment, murder in the first degree, the jury of your peers having found you not guilty. As to count 2, crime of aggravated child abuse, a jury of your peers having found you to be not guilty. As to count 3, aggravated manslaughter of a child, jury of your peers have found you not guilty.
When that verdict was read, we have this massive team embrace. They saved my life. After 3 years of dread and sadness, finally, they proved my innocence.
The real question is, who's going to go down for this?
There has been no justice for Caylee. There was a miscarriage of justice.
We were actually advised, no matter what the verdict was, to exit for pretty much our safety. I felt at peace with the verdict because I asked God to show me justice for Caylee. If something intentionally happened to her, that Casey go to jail the rest of her life. But Lord, please grant her what you feel is the right punishment. And I feel he did. And I'm okay with that. I feel at peace with that.
It's always who can put on the best show. I hate to say that word. Jose did his job. He put on the best show. He got what he wanted. Jose won.
What most people don't realize or think about, we all think in terms of guilty and not guilty. We never think in terms of that third verdict. I just don't know. And when it's I don't know, there's but one box that you can check, and that's not guilty.
Casey was found not guilty of the major charges. She was convicted of the misdemeanor charge of providing false information to law enforcement. She was sentenced to 4 years in prison, but with credit for time served and good behavior, Casey was released just 10 days later.
I don't give a about what anybody thinks about me. I don't care about that. I never will. I'm okay with myself. I sleep pretty good at night.
We talk from time to time. I speak to her on the phone. I think it's a slow process, but I feel that we're reconnecting. I have to forgive her. I have to forgive her because if I don't forgive her, then I'm not going to be able to live with myself.